I'm not visible.
Do you want to come around a different place?
Adjust the camera.
If we speak, it may just drop down to us. Oh no, it can't get down to us.
We could always try sitting somewhere around the table a bit if you want.
I'm perfectly happy.
See, I'm here. And I've got a shadow on my best side. Just a bit.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Mayor.
Thank you for coming, and it's good to see Councillor Ahmed on Zoom as well. Can we agree that if Councillor Ahmed wants to speak, we can suspend standing orders to enable that?
Propose we agree.
That's already agreed.
I thought I was going to say
That's already
That's already agreed before.
The other minor thing that we discussed earlier was, should we resume standing to speak? And I don't know what people feel, but the suggestion is that we should resume that, and that it's maybe easier for people watching to see who's speaking as well. So it facilitates that.
Yeah.
Is everybody content with that?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So we've no members of the public wanting to speak. Can we move on to item 1 then? Apologies for absence.
Councillor Davis is attending the annual parish meeting in Chapter. Councillor Wright and Councillor Willett are both away. Councillor Schaefer is poorly, and Councillor Mordew has another meeting.
Thank you. Are we happy? Sorry?
You were doing what I was saying.
Are we happy to receive and accept those apologies?
Propose we do so.
Thank you. Declarations of interest at this point. Councillor Stutchbury.
Just make comment, won't comment on the. Yeah, well done. Well done. I just make a comment on that. We've got a planning application there. I'm not entirely sure whether it will go to the area planning committee or the strategic planning committee. So I may comment on things to look at, but I won't vote on the application or in such times like that, because I may get prejudiced at a later stage and not be able to speak in the meeting, though I have called the application to committee, which may well have prejudiced me in any case. So I have called it in. But we have to be very careful with these things. So I'm speaking to tell you what my prejudices and what my actions have been so far. And I haven't had a response to my correspondence about the calling yet. But the chairman of planning has seen my actions on that. And so thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Item 3, minutes. The minutes of the full council meeting on Monday, the 7th of February. People happy with those?
Agreed.
And the interim minutes on Monday, the 7th of March. Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just like to suggest that we slightly change the apologies for absence to say, so we need to deal consistently with how we minute people who are on Zoom. Councillor Cole's helpfully raised. So we're already showing who's present in person, who's present via Zoom, but it might be better if all our minutes, these and then in the future, all our minutes said apologies were received and agreed from Councillor Cole, Councillor Davis, Councillor Hetherington, who, for not being present physically. And that way, it's clear that their apologies, it's clear they're there, but they're giving apologies for not being physically present for a valid reason, and therefore apologies are accepted, which means they couldn't fall foul of the 6-month rule by mistake. So in other words, if somebody attended by Zoom for 6 months, you couldn't then argue, yeah, but they haven't, but they stopped being a council automatically. If people are happy to go with that wording.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
I just want a clarification. If somebody gives apologies for 6 months, would we not regard them still as being not present? Would we, if we've accepted their apologies for 6 months, are we then saying that they're still present? I don't quite understand that.
So the way the legislation works, and I can't remember the exact wording of it, but the legislation effectively says that if a member fails to attend any council meeting for 6 months, they automatically cease to be a member unless before the end of that 6 months, the council has accepted a reason for their not attending.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm happy if the town clerk believes it covers the legalities of it, and we may change it as and when time moves forward. Hopefully one day we won't be having to have this, because it's mainly because of people being like, we've got a member today who's fortunately unable to be with us because they've got COVID, yet we've willingly been able to attend and take part in the meeting and not vote. So I think for the time being, it's fine, but we may at some point drop it because if circumstances improve.
Thank you. Is everybody in favour, please show.
That's
Unanimous, thank you. And the minutes of the planning committee.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could present to the council the planning minutes for Monday 14th of February and Monday 7th of March. And if I could just record my thanks to Councillor Ralph, who stepped in to chair the March 7th meeting while I was positive with COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. The town centre, that's people are happy with those minutes.
There was no recommendations.
Yeah. Town centre and events, Councillor Secretary.
I'm happy to present the minutes of the town centre events for the 7th and the extraordinary 25th February. I would like to say that for the record, I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in the events during that period of time, and we put quite a lot forward to the town, and I'm immensely grateful for the efforts put in. But the minutes, I hope, are noted, because some of them haven't been back to committee to be agreed, but I would like to say for the record how hard people worked in that period.
Thank you. Yes, it's not been an easy time for events, so when things have had to be rearranged, so we've done very well with what we've achieved recently. Now, Environment Committee, neither the chair or the vice chair is there, so I'll present the minutes of the Environment Committee from the 28th of February. Happy with those?
Yeah.
Thank you. There aren't any recommendations. Resources Committee, Councillor O'Donoghue.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've got the 31st of January minutes, and we've got a recommendation that we adopt the code of conduct with minor amendments. So we take that one first.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Suppose we accept the recommendation.
Councillor Harvey.
I second that, obviously.
Thank you. We have had quite a lot of discussion about the code of conduct, not only in resources, but we had a workshop earlier in the year as well. So those in favour of accepting that recommendation, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And then we've got another recommendation that we've got a revised version of the financial regs. That's appendix C.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Happy to propose that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you.
And seconded.
Thank you. Those in favour that we accept the recommendation, please show. It's again unanimous.
That's it from me, Mayor.
Fantastic. Thank you very
Well
much. That completes the minutes. And now item 9, support for Ukrainian refugees. Did you want to start on that one, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you start?
We had the extraordinary meeting last Monday, which I think everybody here attended, either in person or on Zoom, I'm not sure. And then we also had, there was a community meeting on Thursday, which Paul and I and Louise attended and facilitated, because the person who was due to chair it was unwell and unable to be there, so it was agreed that we would deal with that. And Louise has helpfully provided some minutes to that, but those haven't been those were circulated to the people who attended. They're not council minutes as such. But the meeting was really so that when your refugees do arrive here, that we're ready with people to host and support and provide facilities for them. So we're ready to move forward. There are some sheets, I think, at the end of the table if people want to sign up to support or to put their name down on a register, then do that at the end of the meeting. That's one way of signing on. Is there anything else to add?
I suppose just to add that But we've talked a lot to Buckinghamshire Council, so we're very much trying to oil the wheels where they need oiling, but not getting anybody's way. So Buckinghamshire, there should be 3 sign-in sheets, but there's only 2 because one of them got duplicated and I've got the other one. So one of the sign-in sheets should be to Bucks Online. So Buckinghamshire Council have set up a database for anybody who's going to prepare to provide any kind of resources or support to register that there online, and we're directing people towards their email address. Buckinghamshire Council have set up an emergency cell with various work streams underneath it, and I know they've sent out another update that I circulated to councillors just before the meeting, just on how they're developing their processes, and I'm attending the community engagement subgroup tomorrow for parish councils.
And somebody who was there on Thursday is also setting up a specific Facebook page for that group as a means of getting support. Councillor Stuttery.
I'd just like to say thank you, Mayor. I got to the meeting, I think about halfway through, and I must say that so many people turned up to that meeting. We must thank the Newin who provided wonderful cake, and as you know, I'm not averse to trying cake, and they hosted us, or hosted the community, and the Mayor and the town clerk provided lots of information, and it was very what I call workmanlike meeting, what I could see, and I'd been in contact with the Buckinghamshire Council myself, and I felt it was appropriate that there wasn't too many communications on this, so I've corresponded with the Mayor and the town clerk, because the thing with something like this, you don't need too many voices. You need to have somewhere to coalesce around, and I must say, I thought you did an excellent job, Margaret, which was quite a difficult meeting with so many things from safeguarding and such like to be discussed, and I think all credit to both of you. We are at the early stages of this, and we may be talking about this for quite some time now, but judging by the reaction and having seen the uptake, I think Buckingham can be rightly proud about those people who attended. And again, I thank you both for what you've done. Of course, I will, in my other role, support you in what I can, and I'm really pleased to hear that town clerks probably end up leading on the parish thing, I hope, because of his skills, which are very much home to this. And I did have one short conversation with the leader of the council on this matter on the phone, and he was very supportive, to be frankly honest, and gave me the information I wanted within immediate reply. So that shows how serious that they take it, and thank you both again.
Yeah,
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
yeah, just interested to hear how many people turned up, just to give me a sense of the scale of the meeting and how long it lasted.
Louise. 30 to 40. Thank you. Yeah, it was quite full. We were in the courtyard and it was quite full. But yeah, it was good. Thank you. COVID-19.
I've stopped putting COVID-19 on the agenda for meetings. Then a couple of times I actually needed to say something, so I thought I would just note that, as with councillors, COVID-19 has still been having an impact on staff. So we've had somebody off sick or somebody's relative off sick with COVID pretty much since Christmas, I think. And that's just impacted our resource. We've also had people off with the flu that seems to last for a week that's also been going around at the same time. We've also still lost some bookings at Lace Hill because of people either being a bit nervous or people having COVID at the last minute. So the income from Lace Hill isn't going to be quite as good as it should do, because we're still losing bookings and last minute things going on. So we're not taking any other measures than the practical things about if somebody's not well, we encourage them not to come in the office, which people have been good at. And last week, Louise had a cold, so she walked around with a mask for a week. But apart from that, we are carrying on as normal, but there is an ongoing impact, and I'm sure there will be an ongoing impact for months to come again.
So I think we're all conscious it hasn't gone away, it's maybe changed. Councillor Hetherington.
I do feel some concern.
You understand?
I feel some concern that the free lateral tests are going to be discontinued from the 1st of April. And I just think this is a very worrying thing. These uncertain times.
Definitely.
Because I always test before I come to these meetings, and I'm not sure that I would feel very happy about coming down if I wasn't able to test.
Thank you. I think we've still got to bear in mind everybody else's needs and be responsible in our actions. Thank you. 11. To receive and question reports from Buckinghamshire Council and councillors. We've only got one present this evening, which is unusual.
Yeah, firstly, you will have seen the council precept, which has been set. What I think you need to be wary of, that the precept is twofold now. There's the council tax precept and the social care precept. What you have to be aware of, the social care precept now is well over 10% of your council tax. It's roughly 36 to 38 million pounds of the precept, and the council is now totally financially reliant on that council tax precept to fund adult and social care. For a fact, it used to be funded, but prior to 2010, completely by government support grant, which was removed. And now the government support grant, which was paid for by national taxation, now we're paying it by local taxation. And that's quite important to know at a time when people's pockets are pressed. I will be going to Buckinghamshire Council Cabinet meeting tomorrow to raise the question which we've all been working on as a community of councillors on the railway walk, and to raise it with the cabinet member about the cycleway, which will come back at some other point. We'll discuss that. I have been to health and scrutiny, where we talked about carers and the importance of carers in the community and what role they play. We also talked about the ambulance service and how they've been under complete strain through COVID. Into the fire authority, where we set a budget where we were allowed to put it up by £5, and that budget in itself is just about adequate to cover the costs. But going forward, there's going to have to be some really serious thinking about how we go forward, because the government isn't going to allow the authority to levy that precept going forward. It will probably come back to the 1.9 or 2%. It's worth monitoring the fire authority. There's been some discussion on social media about the situation of firefighters and how much time they work and overtime. I've questioned that, have received answers which is in the public domain. Also, you may be aware that the council, in its budget, which I think is something particular for this council to be aware of, that the precept settlement meant that around £1 million was withdrawn from the community board settlement. I think we need to discuss that, or the town council needs to discuss how that implications. What we need to do, what I would suggest from a Buckinghamshire Council thing, we need to see clarity that those bids that we've put in actually retain the funding for them. Because as a Buckinghamshire Council, I've been quite challenged. The town council, some of the parishes' bids have been quite delayed, and then other things have been moved in front of them. There are some rumblings out there across Buckinghamshire over this issue, but the reason it was cut, which is understandable in one respect but regrettable in another, is because the council took the money and put it into adult and social care. And that was what the rationale was behind it. But of course, you remember last year, there was a lot of play around the fact that we've got this extra money in the budget and you're all going to be able to fund it, but there was never going to be a rollover. So it's a semantics around politics on which position you take on it. The reality is, from our point of view, we need clarity for all people on whether they get their submissions through or whether they don't go through, because when all the pots are added up in Buckinghamshire, do ours get through? Because there's some pretty important ones there. And we do note that, much to my discontent, the application we made for 20 mile an hour feasibility study was dropped. But that in itself is an immense irritant to me personally, because that application was 18 months old, and 18 months old hadn't been determined by the members by the time the 24th of September motion to change that went through. So it falls by default because it hadn't actually been agreed in advance. That means that from a Buckinghamshire point of view, we've got to have a serious conversation how we do it. On a personal note, I thought that was really bad form because we didn't get notified. You were not notified, even though one as a Buckinghamshire council knew what was going on. The town council wasn't notified about these things in advance of its precept meeting, where it could have had a discussion whether it wished to start precepting to actually do that over a number of years, which is unfortunate because we were hit twice. Once, the community by not it being approved to a feasibility study, and two, that if we want to do it, we've got to put it into a new precept. So that delays it for 12 months. But as I say, I will be largely doing lots of different things. And the community board meetings, of course, got a new chairman, as you well know, which is Councillor Mordew. And we'll see how it progresses. I've got a feeling that he's probably took on the chairship at one of the most difficult times if funding is not available for all the things that has been promised. We will see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, just a couple of questions for Councillor, a couple of comments really in some ways. Thank you for raising the issue about the precept, because the notices that have gone out suggest that the adult social care element has only gone up by 2%, but in fact it's gone up by 20.81%, which is not shown on the documentation that is distributed. But I think that is poor form, frankly, to not give council taxpayers the true increase, rather than instead hide behind the fact that the increases relates to being 2% of the overall precept for the Shire Council. But it actually has gone up by 20.81%, and I think that should be on record, that we noted that. And secondly, I was going to be asking Councillor Mordew a question, but given that he's not here, I would ask Councillor Dutchby instead, with relationship to the community board agenda. Might it be possible for the community board to discuss whether all the parishes covered by our community board should all give at least £1 per household to citizens' advice? We do that here, and there's a grant that we made on a long-term basis for citizens' advice, which is going to be seriously needed over the next couple of years, is on the basis of £1 per household. And I personally think that all the parishes should be making that same commitment of raising money from their precept to support citizens' advice. I would hope that I'll be pushing an open door with how, of course, bring this involvement with citizens' advice and so on. But I would ask through you, Councillor Dutchby, that agenda item should be added to the community board meeting for it to be debated, and maybe act a little bit of guilt tripping for the other parishes to do their bit to support services that their residents are currently using.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. You want to respond?
Yeah, firstly, briefly, yeah, thank you. Briefly, I totally concur with what you say. Please, if when I sit down, if that's an agreed action, if that can be a proposal that we do that, or whether that's a written request to me with the general feeling of the councillors here, I'm happy to write to Councillor Mordew and the community board with that. But use the words, I think that's inappropriate. If that you've suggested it, John, it has. I can't write your words. That's wrong, and it would probably be better that either that we take it offline. I'm totally happy to do that. What I can't do, remember, I'm an opposition member in a group of councillors on the community board, is guarantee that they would share our hopes. But I will do it.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Well, just to say, I'll propose it for them that our council writes to the chair of the community board, asking for this item to be on the agenda, with a view to expressing a desire that all parishes find at least £1 per household in their parish to support citizens' advice.
This actually came up in a meeting, didn't it? Remind me what the meeting was.
I think we discussed it, yeah.
Was it at the annual town meeting?
It just occurred to me that's something we could do.
Yeah,
And I had a sidebar conversation with them. So I'm raising it now because it feels it's germane. And then Howard being here, I'm sure he would agree.
yeah.
So that's one proposal that we as a council write to ask for that to be on the agenda.
And that's the right way to channel that, is it, by the community board? Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So if everyone seconds that, we could vote on.
Are you seconding? Councillor O'Donoghue seconding.
Yeah, I just briefly say to that, there is another channel which, once I have the wording, I will write to a written question to council asking whether this has been given any consideration, to get something in writing back from the cabinet member saying that this is a feeling, because although Councillor Morgie may propose it from one Buckingham community board, remember how many community boards there are in Buckinghamshire, and that won't overrule all the other community boards where the cabinet member could consider this in his deliberations of what he's doing. And I totally concur with the social issues in the country that the CAB are likely to be busy. I hope that's okay. If I can have the wording for that, because what I don't want to do is misrepresent anyone's view. I want to represent the views of the council when I do that.
Well, we've got a proposal on the table, seconded. Can we, those in favour of that proposal, please show?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Those against? Abstentions?
1.
One abstention. Thank you. That's carried. So I'm sure we can come up with that and take that forward.
And I'll take that through for the wording.
Thank you. Item 12, the new licensing policy. Unfortunately, the link didn't work to the full document, which puts, I mean, it was sent around, but not till this afternoon. So I guess that most people haven't had the chance to look at it in any detail. It's a question of how we proceed with this in those circumstances. The document isn't for consultation, it's more for, it does say on the agenda to receive and discuss, but it is something over which we have little say. Councillor Stutchbury and then Councillor Harvey.
I questioned the policy because you will be aware that the policies were different in the 4 historical district areas. And when I was asked the question, I was advised that there is a legal obligation on Buckinghamshire Council as a new authority to have licensing should be in conformity. And that was to do with the question twofold. One was to do with the BP and one was to do with the questions over the hours of the McDonald licence. I needed some clarity on that. What I do feel is that it's not a thing with licensing that we can objectively influence, because it's a quasi-legal thing. What I do think we need to do is monitor the policy and bring it back in the round within 6 to 8 months and monitor the impact of the policy on the community and take it forward. What I am concerned about is, separate to that, is to be assured that they haven't taken any decisions on any application, because I'm well aware that our chair of planning is working to represent us on an outstanding case to do with BP. What I am unsure about is, as that was before the policy came in, how that stands against the new policy. But the policy was voted through because there was no reason not to vote it through, because it was legally sound at Buckinghamshire, and vote against it would have been ridiculous because it's a legal policy. But I do think, as I stated once more, we should monitor the policy against how it works in Buckingham and make sure the policy, if something isn't working, is that the officers enforce the regulations within the policy. I think that's the only thing we can do in brief. I know it sounds difficult because I've looked at it in a different place and I apologise, but that's where we are with it. Begrudgingly, it is legal.
Thank you. So, are we happy to, oh, Councillor Harvey.
Well, I was going to move next business.
All right. Councillor, we've moved next business. Do
Well, I moved it, it was moved
Yeah.
three.
people agree to move to next business?
I propose we chairman of planning first and then move next business.
Okay, councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm obliged to Councillor Stutcliffe for reminding us about the BP appeal. Could I, through you, Mayor, ask the clerk where we are at the moment? We appealed against the BP 24-hour alcohol licence at Milton Keynes Magistrates Court. Do we have an update on where we are with it?
It's not on the agenda for detailed discussion. If you like, I'll put it on the agenda for planning next Monday and then briefing beforehand. Councillor Cole, would that be?
Thank you, I'm obliged.
Thank you. So we'll move, are we happy to move to next business?
Yeah.
Thank you. Levelling up white paper. This is quite a lot to take on board, and it's to receive and discuss this white paper. And we've got Appendix E.
I ain't started yet, I agree.
I thought I'd already discussed it. So I am monitoring how long. We've got Appendix E that applies. Just got to find that again. Bear with me, it's not easy working through these. Which is the NALC document that summarises the government document. Has anybody any comments, or shall we receive this? Oh, Councillor Stutchbury.
I think this is one of those using another council's favourites and as a curate's egg, isn't it? We all want more money to go to import into other areas. What we are unclear is how that levelling up will impact on Buckinghamshire, and when it comes to strategic matters such as health, infrastructure and education and well-being. We're all quite unsure about that, and this document in itself is unclear how it says it. I'm not sure what the impact's going to be on the Principal Council, Buckinghamshire Council. I've heard nothing to say that it's going to be a great thing for us. And it's, at the moment, to coin a phrase, it is a phrase, levelling up. Who wouldn't want people to have it? But I would imagine that in areas in Buckinghamshire, in hidden areas, there's people who have never had anything and are quite poor as well. And the danger is that there'll be even less money to support those areas in deprived areas in Buckinghamshire and the rural community. So we must watch this go through, but there's very little we can do. The only thing I worry about is it mentions still in infrastructure, and I'm unclear. It would be really quite strange, wouldn't it, if we found out that we had 100,000 houses in North Buckinghamshire, theoretically, and that the money that came from them went up north to level up, and we had nothing back for it. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but they've been not opaque, let's say. So I think we just have to pretty much note this, but bring it back for future discussion as the policies unwind.
Should we just receive this report
Receive,
and bear it in mind as appropriate? Thank you. Moving on to item 14, moving traffic offences. We've seen that the two items that apply to us are the High Street junction with Moreton Road and Wells Street, and they're for two different purposes. One's to do with enforcing a no entry sign, and the other one's the weight restriction. You saw Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Cole.
Yeah, these are curious in a way, because in the time that I've lived in Buckingham, I've only ever seen once a car turn up the wrong way up the street past past the pub and the fish and chip shop. I think it's almost impossible to go up there unless you're really, really determined. So it seems a curious highlighted, unless the police have got some data that shows it be a real hotspot. The one with the weights in Well Street makes a lot of sense, but actually, if there are two that we can have, the other one that I would propose is people parking on the zebra crossings by Domino's. That's a place where there's a serious safety risk of pedestrians crossing the road there by the old town hall. That's an area that I would say is far more important that that's enforced properly than the area going up past the old trail.
I thought it was the opposite, you know, where people park by the cattle pens. I thought it was that way rather, but it's actually ambiguous now, I see. It could be either of those, couldn't it?
I think it's going on.
Towards Costa.
Yeah.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to answer what Councillor Harvey's asking about, it's not Market Hill, it is Prezzo's going down towards the hospital, it is that route. It's the one that's parallel to the high street. I cannot see, like Councillor Harvey, any sense at all. I've never in the 40 years I've been in Buckingham ever see a car go the wrong way there. It's quite obvious the cars are parked in Chevron. The only way you can get into it is coming from the other end. I'm all in favour of the weight restriction one. Somebody has suggested, Councillor Davis, who's not here tonight, perhaps the Addington Road junction. But again, I've never seen anyone try to start that. My recommendation, if they want a second one, you will all be aware that the Maids Moreton Walnut Drive application was passed last week against all the protests and objections. The Section 106 money is going to go towards a Keep Clear junction outside here, where Cornwall's Meadow car park joins Stratford Road and buses come from the other side. To enforce it, it have to be a yellow hatch box, which again is a traffic offence if you stop on that. So that would be logical, but we don't know when it's coming. Regarding the zebra crossing, that is a police offence. It's nothing to do with councils. It's actually a police offence which attracts points as well as a heavy fine. So, but that would be my recommendation: the weight restriction, and when we get it, the Keep Clear box outside here.
Thank you. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Mayor. They mentioned in here about stopping on school, keep clear markings, and it's nice that they did recommend 2 areas, but if they really are serious about cars not stopping on school, keep clear lines, and I can highly recommend outside mine, Moreton Meadow School, and I have lots of photographs I'm happy to pass around members of cars that clearly don't know the highway code.
Thank you. Councillor Mahi.
Thank you. I have seen cars come up the jail a few times, and in one case I asked him, coming up the wrong side, what he said was, sorry, I can't read. There's a sign there. And I've also seen a car come up the way and reverse into those spaces, and reverse back, and then they turn around back the other way. I think I did have a picture of that, but I've since deleted it. But yes, I have seen this cars coming up.
Councillor Stutchbury, and then I think we need to.
I concur with everything Edwin said. What's unclear in the document is who's going to actually monitor these cameras. At the moment, we've got cameras in the town which are being monitored through the town council. And these are going to be additional cameras which they're choosing to put into the town, and who's going to fund the monitoring of them. If they think that by some remote opportunity that we're monitoring them, that's unfortunate. If they're funding these council cameras, perhaps we could allow them to take on the funding of all the other cameras in town, which had went through real consultation and discussion about the principle of doing it. They do want to fund one, perhaps a mobile one would be a better use for where we have problems. And I do question, because we have another camera already, which none of you may have realised, which was being put in on the Tesco's roundabout. The pole there, which we discussed, there should be a camera on it 3 years ago, and we were informed there's no pole there and there's no need to put a camera on it. If you go and look at it, there's a pole camera on it, which I understand has been funded by one of the railway projects. So there is a camera on there. So I do think that the logic of going up these 2 places I've not seen anyone in great extent doing there, going up these places, unless they've got some data which they're not sharing with us, which I think was previously said. So I think that I want clarity on the funding, because I don't think we want to find ourselves funding something that we didn't choose. And if they want to put it through our system, we should charge them.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just a question, when was this received? He was asking for
By Monday.
by next Monday, and when did we actually receive this?
I honestly can't remember. I'll have a
Because it seems extraordinary, limited time for consultation on something that, as Councillor Zachary has said, could be quite an important feature of the town. And also, is it just for parish and town council to respond to, or is it for members of the public to respond to? Because if members of the public, they need to be alerted. I would say we should push back and say this is not long enough for consultation, particularly as parishes who don't meet as often as we do, will have been sent this information to.
Towards the end, it does ask if you're responding as an individual or as part of an organisation, so it's obviously both and.
Okay.
It's possible for organisations and individuals to respond. But I know that they're not discussing it until, well, 10th of May. So it does seem a very early deadline, although I suppose by the time papers are circulated and distributed, they do need a run-in period.
This is the first full council we've had for some time, so some things have stacked up a little bit for the meeting.
So that's the other question as to how, I suppose we can respond individually. We've all got the possibility of doing that, but I think we should respond as town council as well. So it's a question, does feel as though there's some consensus around the table. Councillor Stuckford, something?
Yeah, I asked the question, who's funding it? I think this is really key. Have we seem unclear when we received the consultation, and we fund pretty much the CCTV of what we've got in the town. I don't want to find out that the town council, though not being properly consulted, then ends up funding this, and the town council rate funds this and not some other rate funds it, or it doesn't come out of Thames Valley Police. We've had a good working relationship with Thames Valley Police on the cameras, so one is surprised why we're not having such a good relationship with this. And I don't know this, I haven't seen this before I come to this meeting, so I do have a lot of emails. I don't recall being asked, unless it was just they contacted East councillors and not West, because obviously we don't use the town centre, and what possible interest would I have in crossing the river at any point in my life?
22nd of February, by the way, when it was sent out.
22nd
of February is the date on the website.
Right, thank you. Councillor O'Donoghue.
Thank you. I don't know if it answers Councillor Stutchbury's concerns, but it says if Cabinet gives the go-ahead, we plan to apply for these enforcement powers to the Department of Transport. So I'm reading that, I would suggest it was the council cabinet that we're going to monitor it, not us.
No, I don't think it's any suggestion that we should. Councillor Try.
Thank you. I'm happy for the council to propose the Wells Street weight restriction item, but not for number 5. I think that is just purely money making, a waste of time within the
For fining people.
even if it does happen occasionally.
But we could possibly suggest that another location within Buckingham would be possibly that junction, as you say, for the buses turn, once they've got the hatching there.
Yeah.
Thank you. So do you draft a response, Town Clerk? Are people happy for based on the discussion we've had for the Town Clerk to do that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Moreton Road Phase III, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. You will have seen the document that Catherine's prepared. It runs to 14 pages. There's a huge amount of information, and I am going to propose that we delegate this to Planning Committee next week. But first, just for the benefit of new members and also members of the public watching, just to very briefly tell you that this site, Moreton Road Phase III, has a long and controversial history. It's the application for 130 dwellings, which were first validated in 2014 as the third phase of Bellway Homes Moreton Road development of 410 houses on farmland to the west of Moreton Road. The first 2 phases, which are 280 houses, were within the Buckingham neighbourhood plan, but phase 3 was outside it. ABDC, which was then the planning authority, recommended approval, but because of the conflict with the Buckingham neighbourhood plan, Buckingham Town Council in April 2016 formally requested that the Secretary of State call in the application. He agreed, and a public inquiry was held over 6 days in February 2017. Although the planning inspector recommended approval, the Secretary of State overruled him and refused planning permission, as the development would be contrary to the Buckingham neighbourhood plan and in conflict with our policy HP. Housing in the revised Vale plan, which was made in September 2021, that supersedes the Buckingham neighbourhood plan. And Bellway Homes has made a new application which came before this council in September 21. What is before us tonight are amended plans to that. We can no longer object in principle to these 130 houses. And we know Bellway Homes has set the affordable housing content, funded bungalows, at the Buckingham neighbourhood plan minimum of 35%. So for that, we have a win. It's still within our town boundary, however, and there are a large number of issues which we need to consider, not least the developer's failure to acknowledge the Buckingham Design Guide, which the Buckingham Society is very strong about at the moment. I'm grateful to Catherine for her comprehensive report, but as I say, it runs to 14 pages, and we need both her guidance and input from the Buckingham Society, and particularly their planning expert Roger Newell. So I would ask members here tonight to delegate our response to the planning committee, which meets a week from tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. Do we have a seconder to that proposal? Councillor Harvey? You happy to second that? Those in favour, please show. So,
I'm abstaining.
you're abstaining.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yes, sorry.
8 plus
For
1
the reasons
abstention.
said
That's
earlier.
everybody. Thank you. I think that's a very sensible way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And item 16, the river pollution incident in 2018, town clerk.
So this was requested for the agenda by Councillor Dutch-Green. Just to note that Lee's spoken to officers we know from the Environment Agency and asked where it's up to, and their response was it's with our legal team.
Oh, that's a cop out. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dutch-Green.
Actually, would imagine I have corresponded on this. And I confer what I got in response that, you know, this is very complicated and we mustn't prejudice any outcomes of any possible solutions and that type of thing. But I do think it's worth noting that we are now in 2022. This incident took place in 2018. There was another instance in 2017 before this instance, which I believe goes to court very soon. And that will be in the public domain. I think we have to monitor this. We made our feelings concerned about what was happening with pollution, sewage in the river, didn't we, earlier in the year? And that was reciprocated by Buckinghamshire Council. So the idea that our river shouldn't be protected, the idea that it should take such an amount of time to deliberate on it. I could imagine that if either one of us had a pollution incident outside our house, I don't think we'd be waiting to 2022 for determination on whether we actually did anything wrong. But that said, I think, can I suggest that we ask the town clerk to do two things. One is write to them saying that, can we have the case number when it's available? For the case, no, there is a legal case actually taking place, because there isn't a legal case on this. The idea that we can prejudice something is nonsense, right? So we need to know the case number. We need to also, in that correspondence, ask them for the approximate time that they feel that it will be before it appears before a court. And if they say they can't give us that information, that means they've done very little. And at this stage, judging by the other one, they should be at least be able to approximately, because I mean, I was out there on the day of the pollution and I was looking at all the dead fish in the river. So I'm pretty sure I wasn't an illusion. And we did get a bit of coverage. And I did get to chat to a television camera, which was immense fun for them, I'm sure. And it wasn't my mother. And but I do think we can't look at it. And the other point I would ask is that we both bring this back to a future council meeting. And if there's any significant information between now and then, that it comes to the earliest possible environment meeting and to be discussed about those details, if it needs to be confidential, with a recommendation for how council proceeds, so that we cover both bases and don't just keep putting it on full council. I hope that's agreeable, because we're all equally concerned. I put it on the agenda because I'm frustrated, and it came up in my timeline that again, and it just comes up to me again, and I cannot answer the question to a member of the public saying when will it be. I'm unable to. It's a very unsatisfactory situation.
Thank you. And thanks, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, obviously it's important that we stay on track with this. What I would propose as well, because I agree with what Councillor said, I'll second your suggestion, is that we also write to our MP to say two things really. One is this is an outstanding issue that the Environment Agency seems to be dragging their feet over. And is there any way that he can speed things up a little bit? Or maybe provide a proper explanation as to why it's taken as long as it has. And secondly, in a sense related to this in a way, there are about at least 2, if not 3, big trees that have fallen into the river. And there are riparian responsibilities that need to be enforced. And it seems that the only agency that can really do that is the Environment Agency itself. So I'd suggest that we also ask our MP to maybe ask the Environment Agency as well as to what they're doing about those issues, because Buckingham is a flood town. We get flooding. We do our best as a town council with river rinse once a year. We don't want things blocking up our river course, because that risks increasing flooding should it happen again.
Thank you.
Can I?
Councillor Satchwell.
I'm happy to. I'm grateful for the seconding, but I think I'm not going to talk about that in this meeting. But I think that if Councillor Harvey would accept that, I think we have an early item on the Environment Committee agenda to discuss the fallen trees now, so that we can give it the full conversation, the weight. I can't say what I know, only that I have managed to had some success in some areas in Buckingham at the moment, and I'm aware of what he's on about, and I'd like to be in a position where I can give him with some advice from the town clerk how we move forward in the next meeting. I don't think tonight's the night when I should do that. So would you accept that we take that to the Environment Committee, where we can discuss it in the full length that we need to, and the wait for a future meeting isn't too long?
Thank you. Councillor O'Donoghue first. Sorry.
Thank you. Just for any councillors or members of the public benefit, what I used to do when I walked the dogs around Moreton Park, if I noticed any fallen trees, I'll take a photograph of them and send them to Lee, because he was very good at determining who owned what piece of land and whether it was ours. And if it was our responsibility, him and the guys were there, like within days, getting all the trees and stuff out the river. So it's an avenue that people can go down.
Thank you. I think that's all helpful information. We don't actually have the fallen trees on the agenda tonight. It's about the pollution incident, which was extremely serious pollution incident. And I think we need to be cautious that we don't mix the two issues as well when we write to the MP. I think we should write him on, if we want to write to the MP about fallen trees, we should do that separately.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that.
Did you want to say anything else?
I was going to say, yes, I'm happy with what you just said there and what Councillor just said. Let's focus our attention upon the incident and then put on the agenda the Environment Committee discussion about the trees in the river.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show.
That is unanimous.
Unanimous, thank you. The Climate Emergency Action Plan Annual Review. This, we look at this as full council, but the committees also look at their particular focus areas of the Climate Emergency Action Plan. We obviously had this as the focus of our annual town meeting last Thursday. So we are pursuing this with some priority. Councillor Harvey.
For the very reason that you said, that we did a meeting last week, which was very well attended. And there's a report yet to be written of all the contributions that were made, the ideas that came forward from residents and others who were present. It seems to make sense to me to put this on the agenda for the next school council, not discuss this today. I would propose that we remit this to the next school council meeting. So once you had a chance to look at the report from last week's meeting, we could then leave that in rather than review it now.
Thank
Would be
you.
my proposal.
Do we have a second for that proposal? Councillor Ralph. Councillor Sean?
One, I think our video is frozen.
Oh, it's just that, so the video itself is gone.
Oh,
but
so
the
it's
face-
hello me. Forgive me, just a small thing. The logo on this, have I not seen another logo with a electric plug and the B and a leaf or something? Or am I getting it mixed up with something else? We've got consistency in logos.
We did look at another logo in communication strategy group, didn't we?
Oh.
Louise?
Yeah, that's the old logo.
That's the old logo that's changing.
Sorry,
Councillor's right.
I'm sitting down, sorry.
Sorry, that was the previous speaker. I think I better stop trying to type.
Mine did all right so far.
Apologies.
So we'll update that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So shall we vote on that proposal then to remit it till we've got the report from the annual town meeting? Those in favour?
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. And now item 18, planned communications. Louise has got a presentation on this. Ready? Over to you, Louise. Louise is our communications clerk for those watching on screen.
So can I just while Louise is getting ready, Madam Chair, this, just to say, this communication strategy group discussed the need for Louise to present this to councillors, which is why we're doing what we're doing.
Members of that committee have to declare an interest.
You have to be interested.
I hope you were interested.
All right, so well, everyone knows me anyway, but I'm Louise and I'm a communications clerk. And this is, I promise will be short because I know it's late, but it's a quick introduction to what we do in terms of communications and why it's important. So, good. Next slide, please. So a question I get asked sometimes is, what is communications? And it is absolutely every message from the county council to the public in any way that is given out. So by the public, we mean, again, anyone who has any connection with Buckingham, not just residents, but local businesses, people who commute here, everyone. And we use various methods to talk to them. So we have our social media, we've got a website, we've got newsletters, posters, banners, the way we arrange and display our public spaces, press releases, and how we respond to inquiries. Why is it important that we invest in communications? As you all know, the council does not act in a vacuum. Good communications with the public are really important for adding strength and scrutiny to council decisions. It does give everyone more confidence in what they're doing. In terms of why it's a continuous process to keep investing in communications, mainly because they aren't static, they change all the time. When officers are talking about what we're going to do in advance, we have a lot of debates, and for each thing there'll be a different plan. We'll be talking about whether we use free resources for marketing, whether we need to use paid, what's going to be the best value for money in terms of paid for that project, and it will be different for each thing. Online platform changes, so Meta, who now own Facebook, is a new name for Facebook, and Instagram and WhatsApp and groups like that. They change how their platforms work all the time, and that has knock-on consequences for how we present our information in order to be effective and reach people. And there's also other changes to do with, you know, Apple might make a change to it, how its iOS works, which impacts on how we can work with advertisers. There's lots of knock-on effects that are constant and we have to keep adjusting for. Another two big changes are external to the tech side. One of them is changing consumer habits. So we know that people don't walk around a town centre the way they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. They behave with interact with public spaces in a slightly different way. And that's also true of how businesses talk to each other. When we're talking about communications, we're often thinking about circles of people that we want to be having conversations with. And businesses are obviously a key group that we want to talk to. And when they change how they talk to each other, when they were locked down, they stopped meeting face to face and started talking to each other informally through social media messaging platforms. We had to become part of that as well, because we always need to be in the place where the conversations are happening. So, in general, the golden rule is that we have to keep up to date or we are left behind. So we put a lot of work into that. Over the last 5 years, our communications have improved a lot. One of the main things we think about constantly is how we're making use of the space that we have. And that can be physical space, you know, talking about banners, they don't have to be just on the railings, we could put them up on the buggers, we could put them up in other spaces. We've got the chamber window we started using now, make more use of the local paper than we used to. And there's also virtual improvements that we've made. So we've had continual improvement of the town centre website over the last 5 years, and that's resulted in nearly double the visitors that we used to get. Within that time, we've done a couple of refreshes of the website for different reasons. We're about to do another one. So in terms of social media, we have, I found out earlier this year that we get used as a good practice example for other councils and training. So we're doing pretty well. We're one of the top performing for a town or parish council in terms of our follower numbers. So we used to have, 5 years ago, we were at under 4,000 followers, and now we've got more than 18,000. Obviously, the town size is about 15,000. So again, talking about those circles, we know we're going outside the circle of just yeah.
You're officially an influencer then, are you?
So obviously some of the, in those previous slides I was talking about users and followers and engagement and reach. And I think sometimes it's not really clear what they mean, and it doesn't necessarily matter that much apart from to me, but the reason I track them is because it helps us to fulfill our council aims and objectives. And I won't go over those because I know you've done it recently, but essentially the more users we can reach, the better engagement we get with the public, and the better engagement we get with the public, that pushes the reach of our next project, and it means we can reach more and more people each time. So you know, that allows us to communicate with lots of people, and each positive engagement we have builds relationships, not just with that person, but with other people. We see those positive interactions. Really good value for money. The better we deliver better services in the way that the public expects us to. And public expectation has changed enormously in the last year that I've been doing this. It also massively reduces staff time and inquiries. If you think about it, a good piece of social media is going to reach 10,000 people, and we cannot answer 10,000 phone calls a day. So I've got a little formula that I like to think of. So the higher followers you have, the more engaged, and the more engagement you have, the better reach you get outside those circles of people who already know what we're doing. And we're constantly trying to reach those people who are interested but aren't necessarily all the way on board with us yet. Okay, so what's the role of the communication strategy group? Well, they haven't formally decided this yet, but the plan is that they're going to have 4 formal and 4 informal meetings a year. And the informal ones will be online. They choose, they write, they provide photography and edit newsletter and website content. They monitor and feedback on social media results and planning. They develop and improve the website and print items, including thinking about accessibility and diversity. And they also work on the marketing of major town council projects, adding in their own ideas. In terms of officers planning communications, so we hold planning meetings quarterly, and these are meetings that involve a lot of the staff, sort of 6 to 8 people normally involved. As a group, we rank communications importance of all the upcoming projects in that quarter from high to low. Just to be really clear, I'm talking about communications importance and not any other value of the importance of that project. It's just communications importance. And the reason we do that is that we can't put every project out at a high level because we just don't have capacity to do that. And also it would get kind of annoying to the public, to be honest, to be constantly putting out content all the time about things that kind of don't really justify it. So when we're looking at how we rank things, we look at public interest, we look at council need. So if there's something like a consultation, obviously there's a high council need for that to go well and lots of people to engage with it. We look at public need, so if we've got an event like a charter fair, people need to know about road closure. We look at the number of people impacted, and we also look at whether it makes good contact and builds positive relationships. I mentioned resources, because obviously a high level project takes a lot of resources. In terms of resources, I'm talking about sort of 5 different things really. One of them is assets. Those are physical and digital, so it could be photos, videos, locations, people that we're working with, time, so staff time. So a high level project involves creating a high number of completely unique pieces of content, because if you keep checking out the same thing repeatedly, people kind of almost go content blind, they don't see it anymore. So you have to keep varying what you send out and also sending it out in different formats, so mixing up video and stills and different opportunities. And also often creating interactive elements as well. And councillor time as well, as we're using video more. I know that I call in some councillors and ask them for video, and that's very helpful. So partners is probably the third key thing in terms of resources. All of the groups that we work with, extremely helpful, because each partner we work with brings as well additional marketing opportunities as well as someone to work with on the project. And then the final 2 are kind of interrelated. One I think of as interactivity, and that is opportunities to have conversations before, during and after a project. So for something that's high level, in the last quarter we had the food fair, for example, and we ran the best dish contest, and that was really a lot about having conversations with local businesses that we knew wanted to be talking to us. So that gave us opportunities before the event to talk to them, it gave us opportunities on the day to talk to the public, and it gave us opportunities afterwards to help create really good content that promotes the town and promotes local businesses. So that was a really positive cycle. The other is engagement. So engagement is really about on the day, what makes people take a photo, what makes people like and share and do all of those social media things, but also have those positive moments. So I would suggest, say, the mime at the Twin event was a really good example of that. If you saw him, I'm sure you saw about 5 people with their camera filming him at the same time. All right, so next one, please. So how can councillors get involved? What I'd like to ask everyone to do is to think about projects that you want to be involved in, not just communications projects, but any project that the council is running. Think about what resources already surround that project and how we might be able to use them to help market that project. Can we make a video out of them? What partners can we engage with? What small additional features could we add that would drive interactivity? So those conversations before, during and after. So something we could add that would do that. And what would drive engagement on the day? What would be the thing on the day that people wanted to take photos of? Think about your project as part of a conversation with the public and how it works together. And also, I'd like to invite you to a communication discussion.
You got there in the end.
Okay, that's it.
Can I just say thank you very much for that inspiring thing. I've just done some research while we sat here, and Buckinghamshire Council has 21,100 respondents on Twitter, and 16,000 followers on Facebook. So I think you're doing really very well compared to their uptake, and they've got a budget of £1.2 billion, and we've got a budget which is somewhat smaller than that. Which please stay here and don't go and run their social media, because it appears that you're hitting more targets than they are, or perhaps you're putting stuff out there people are interested in rather than just press releases. And I think it's the interaction of what you do, to be honest, which actually engages with people, makes it interesting, makes it balanced. Some of the things you've done has changed the way we work. It's been interesting. I follow it Aberdeen all the way through. Things pop up while I'm in a meeting, and it's quite nice to respond. And I think what we can all do, those of us on each platform, is to actually forward it to a friend who might be outside the circle and increase the what it is. And that's how it works. But is it right? There's an algorithm, and things which are current get picked up. We've always had this discussion, but I think that people tend to, something seems to pick up and take precedent over something else. I don't understand what it is, because sometimes it seems that what you think is important, but actually what other people are interested in is important to them, and it doesn't always follow.
So there's all sorts of algorithm things, and each social network has its own way of working, so it can't give you one answer. But in general, the thing that's most beloved by all advertisers is videos, and links. So that tends to push things up, but also things like how quickly people like or post comments on it, I can push it up. How many it gets overall, how many people are seeing it. It's definitely a virtuous circle, and it's really helpful to interact with them.
Thank you. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you.
Councillor Trump.
Yeah, just saying about the circle, going outside of that, my mum often tells me things that's happening in Buckingham quicker than I picked it up on it. She's in London, so, and we know that there's people across the world, your family in Canada.
Yeah,
so
they tell me before I know.
America.
Yeah.
And America. I've got family in America that pick it up.
So it's definitely a worldwide thing.
Which I didn't know I had.
Today, I noticed we have a lot of followers in America on YouTube.
I think it's Buckingham thing, Challenge, I think, don't they?
Thank you. Councillor Try.
Thank you. As a member of the communications strategy group, of course, the CSG is our window on the world for our town council. So maybe each committee would like to think if they had a representative on the CSG, because it's their way of pushing things forward into communications. And we can take a punt, and Louise does a sterling job together with Bethany and others, but sometimes we have that sort of personal committee input that may help move things along.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Thank you. Following on from that, we do struggle with quality with communication strategy groups. So any input, extra input, if people would like to come on board, would be appreciated. Councillor Secretary.
I think it's when doing communications on behalf of a committee. It's the screen's not on. When doing communication as a committee, it has to be something the committee has decided, not an individual, because I've got lots of things I'm interested in. That doesn't mean the whole committee. But I do think what Martin's right about getting an interaction. So I think what we do need to do is perhaps turn it on its head and have the communication strategy group as how would I put it, saying this is what we offer to the committees. How can you best work with us to deliver that? Because I'm worried that we'll have too many people coming. You've got something which has worked, right? Throw 3 new people in there from each committee who may be the chair or maybe the vice chair and whatever, and the committee has got its own communications. I think we have to think very carefully how we do that. I think what I do concur with is more people coming to the meetings. I don't think my presence will shorten the meetings. So that might be a regret. But I do think that I have a really avid communication with the office and over the communications. I don't feel in any way as chairman that I'm left out of anything. So, and the actions through the chair and the recommendations to press releases are dealt with very professionally. What we can't do is invent another way of doing that, because you could get a situation where the event which is being promoted is the person in the meeting, but not the decision of the committee. So we've got a really good system communicating back round, and it's worked because we've got far more people getting into it than Buckinghamshire Council. So well done again, and I felt well done to the committee, because obviously your work has actually made that possible, supporting the officers. So well done to you, basically. Be careful what you wish for when you get people come to a meeting with you. But I do concur that just a few more members to be caught, but maybe we could look at something through our standing orders with the town clerk to make it possible, maybe that something along the lines that all members are able to be members of that committee or something like that, so that if somebody turns up, you are quorum. Because I know you have this problem, you need 3 people, don't you, to make a decision, and sometimes it means that the mayor has got to be there because of the 2 of you. So I think maybe the town clerk could look at some way at standing orders where we could do something that to make that ex officio members of committees, chairs and vice chairs or something, just so that you can robust to make it, so that if you need a person to make a decision, so you can get on, they can be there.
Thank you.
What I don't want to do is interfere with what you're doing.
Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Hetherington.
I think we just want 1 or 2 extra people when it comes down to it. And I think the idea of having some better representation from across all the committees is just a way of trying to get that a little bit. And we more or less do cover it. I think the one we don't cover maybe is TCE, as much as we might. And we're open, and one of the reasons we've gone, or we're about to go formally for informal and for formal meetings a year, is that then means we can change, some of the timings and everything else, a bit more flexibility. And also, when we're meeting informally, we haven't got to worry too much about and most meetings that we have, we're not making big decisions. We're simply acting in the role of being an editorial group, really, deciding what's going to go in the copy next. As Louis said, looking at the website, and we're reviewing the website while we're all doing that. So I just think 1 or 2 extra people just would be really, really helpful. And if it means, I know, Sue, that there's an issue about the day that we meet on, we can change those things, we can move things around. If that facilitates people to join, to join the group. Nothing is fixed in stone. We can do sorts of things and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hetherington.
Well, I'd like to add my congratulations to what you're doing. So I think you're very, very effective with communicating, and it's why you have the misfortune to end up with me as a councillor, because I actually knew you were looking for one. And I'd just like to ask, when exactly do you meet? Because I've got a vague idea it is.
So at the moment it's Wednesdays at 2 p.m.
Okay. That is a problem, but
yeah, but we could change. The whole committee said that they were willing to look at other dates and time.
We've already changed it twice, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years to fit with the different reasons. So certainly if somebody's keen to come on board, we can be flexible. And I just wonder whether, in terms of the committee representation, if when we're in committees, different committees, if they've got something that needs communicating, that could be fed into the CSG anyway, regardless of whether there's a member on the CSG. But thank you, Louise, and for all you do and for your presentation this evening, and well done.
Yeah.
That's good on you.
Thank you. Just quickly, because the thing to do with Zoom could be there but not going to be there, because there's sometimes that I would like to be back on the committee, but it's coming out for another meeting that is the issue for me. So if there was any way that I could do that by Zoom, or if that's legal.
So 2 things on that way. One is the committee meets in here, so it would work on there. Obviously, it wouldn't be core if you were on Zoom, so you're not helping with that particular problem, but nonetheless you can contribute. Half the meetings are going to be informal now anyway, so for those you definitely can. And it's probably the committee where we need to push the boundary a bit more with Teams and document sharing and that kind of thing. So it kind of lends itself quite well to the virtual.
We did do document sharing at the meeting, was it last week? It must have been last week.
Worked well.
Yeah, and even I managed the technology just about. I'm not quite sure how I did it, but I found it. So thank you very much. And obviously communication is the key.
And just lastly, Mayor, how effective our communication officer is. I've got something in the email in my box while I'm in this meeting to respond to. So that shows you how effective that is. So
thank you. Item 19, action list. The town clerk wanted to update us on the item in relation to Thames Valley police counter closures.
Oh, we haven't yet got a reply from the Commissioner, but we have had a reply from Buckinghamshire Council's representative on the panel, who has assured me in recent days that he will be raising it with the Commissioner and then reply back. That's Councillor David Carroll.
Okay, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. I first raised this at this council in September 21, deploring the lack of response from the Police and Crime Commissioner. Our clerk wrote again on February the 7th, 7 weeks ago. I propose tonight we now raise a formal complaint against the Crime and Police Commissioner for Thames Valley Police for his contempt for Buckingham Town Council, which is a properly elected local authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, go for it. Oh.
yeah, there you go. There you go. I'll second everything, so you second that. I just speak to it.
Councillor Cole, Councillor O'Donoghue's seconding that proposal. Councillor Sutton.
I think it's an important issue raised here. I'll go back through my correspondence by comment. I asked him some questions. I was in a fire authority meeting and he said he would come back to me. I don't recall having an email. I will check my emails very carefully. So it could be that he suffers from inability to or needs to have a better PA to be able to communicate. It is a very well paid job and it is elected, and with that election comes responsibility. I'm interested that David Carroll, Councillor David Carroll, says he's going to respond, because I sit on the fire authority with Councillor David Carroll. So I may ask him a question next time I meet him, as he would please to hear it. He chairs the audit committee, which I sit on Buckinghamshire Fire Authority. So he's adapted with that. And there are rumours, only rumours, that they are looking at doing a combined authority sometime in the future of police and fire authority. Judging by his attention to Buckingham Town Council, I would suggest that that's probably premature and probably advised. So I'm happy to support it just through the town clerk. Are we legally able to do that? I think we are. And if it's a formal complaint, who do we have to copy into that? Because it has to be so that he can't come back with one of those clipped legal responses saying you haven't applied in the correct box, so we won't consider it. Which is sort of, he may be able to do that quite quickly, and that would be a response to him, in which case it would be quite grateful, which means he'll respond to defend himself, but won't respond to address an issue, which is a completely different way that politicians act.
Councillor Harvey, do you want to clarify anything on that?
Well, the complaints process is I write complaining to the chief executive of the panel.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'm not one to hold back from complaining, because I do a lot. And I would say that recently I've had calls to write and complain about a member of the Office of the Police and Crime Commission staff in Thames Valley, and that was dealt with, albeit very slowly, but it was dealt with. I would say that with regards to the PCC, it's not him alone. It's not him running all the delivery on his own. He has got quite a large team of officers, including the chief executive and several, well, at least 2 dozen other people. I think something in that order. So he's not He's not without staff, he's not without people he can delegate to, and then sign up a letter and so on. My reluctance to back completely what Mark's proposed is that we have had a response from somebody on the peace and crime scrutiny approach saying there will be a response for this soon. And I just wonder whether we should just wait a little bit for that before we lodge a formal complaint. I can see Councillor shaking his head, he's very fed up. I get that. I think I'll probably driven to abstain on the basis purely of what the town clerk has informed us of. Because the processes within the police and crime commissioner offices grind very, 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 very slowly, far too slowly, in my opinion. And I've been raising a serious matter with them, which I've got unfortunately no traction at all. But there are other options I'm going for. But so I think on the basis that we've been told that there will be a response, I think I'm going to abstain. So.
Thank you. Councillor Suchbury.
It's just something, I think what we mustn't, this issue, the reason Councillor Cole saying what he's saying is because of the time frame around this issue, not responding. If we'd had not a response for a limited period of time, I don't think Councillor Cole, who is a retired magistrate and has some, I suggest, actual legal knowledge about such things and how to behave that none of us are privileged to, because we haven't read it in that context. So I'm supporting the magistrate to bring order to the Chief and Crime Commissioner, because he's asking him to respond before him in my prop say, and I think that's an appropriate thing for a retired magistrate to actually comment on law and order and the ability to respond. And because he's probably got more experience in it and for a longer period of time than the Police and Crime Commissioner is. And it was a voluntary role on behalf of the community, and this is a hugely paid role. So I think if you're getting that sort of money for something, you should have a little bit more due diligence.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote on this proposal to issue a formal complaint on behalf of the Town Council? Those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
None.
And abstentions?
2.
That is carried. So over to the Town Clerk. Councillor Harvey.
As we're on the action list, could I also raise one item which doesn't appear to have an entry against it about writing a letter of thanks to Carol Person? Was that done?
Yes, that's done.
That has been done.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Councillor Suchbury.
Just on child poverty, just for information, we haven't really met, and I know Councillor Harvey commented on the frustration around that. I do apologise, John, but we haven't met. But if he can just be reassured that I was working on something in my correspondence inbox today, so it will be raised in the very near future at Buckinghamshire Council, though it's no, it may provide better information for us to meet. And I think he was quite rightly, various people were unable to attend, and it wasn't John who was unable to attend, it was other people whose commitments were such that we didn't meet. So I think that we do need to, after the full council at Buckinghamshire Council, perhaps meet again, discuss that outcome, because it was about child poverty. I don't recall that we met.
Can the councillor clarify whether actually?
No, but we are due to meet this Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I won't be there. I have to apologise because I should be somewhere else, but
Should be Ryan won't be there because he's now.
Ryan won't be there. I'm all got a previous commitment. What time are you meeting? 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, yeah.
My next commitment is at 7:30, so I can perhaps come for I can come for half an hour or meet earlier. If that's all right. I don't know if that works with John. Is that all right if we meet earlier? I can make earlier, because I know John's frustration about not meeting is overwhelming, and we should apologise to him. I could have made some days, but not the people available. So I think if John's happy that we meet earlier, and that's okay, probably 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Can we leave that to be resolved out of the meeting?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Try, will you?
Yes, thank you. Item 3021 on the action list, code of conduct. I noted that we agreed it under the Resources Committee item 8 this evening, but the action is also about training. And I didn't want to lose sight of, it was a two-part sort of agreement one, really. But, so this shouldn't be written off, is my point.
I can respond to that. I specifically didn't put it on the agenda because I didn't have any information at the time of issuing the agenda. However, I have had an exchange with Mel, who is Carol's replacement at Balk, who started last week, who has been in correspondence with the monitoring officer about appropriate training for the code of conduct, and it looks like that will be arranged shortly.
Thank you.
It's additional item, 366/21/21, ongoing. I think that's a description, as I would say, ongoing, to discuss a public health meeting. This was 2017, I think it was, some 18, ongoing, I think it's a broad description. What I would suggest to try and move this forward is, because we aren't moving this forward, and everybody keeps getting completely cul-de-sacked into discussing the issue of the swan practice, which isn't the major issue in Buckingham at present. Can I suggest through the Mayor that we write to the Chief Executive of Health Trust and ask him whether we can be involved in the consultation around the community health hubs, because that's going to be something that we do need to take attention in as a community. 2018/17, we had a community meeting in here. Those members who weren't elected won't know, but there was a health meeting in the hall, and we all attended it, and we were consulted about the community hubs. Nothing happened of any great worth, and then a long gap happened, and then we sadly went into the COVID pandemic. They have wound this out in South Buckinghamshire, and it resulted in many changes. So I think that that's something we need to look at. I think that's the route into it without getting bogged down in discussing the narrow subject of future health provision. Can I propose?
Just remind you what we actually agreed to keep it on here so it wouldn't get forgotten.
And I'm doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Making sure it's not forgotten. But I do sit on public health,
Yeah.
so I might know some of the things that we might need to do. And I'm worried that Buckingham hasn't been consulted, and that's my job here as a town councillor. What I do somewhere else and able to speak isn't all of you, and that's not, and I'm conscious of that. So can I ask that through you, Madam Mayor, that we write and ask them, will they be coming to consult on this? And we want to be part of that future consultation, because they were advised in the health meeting by the chair and myself that it would be probably wise that they reconsult, because there's such a gap. The one thing which we can be assured of that came out of that conversation, which is a big relief, is the Chief Executive is on record now saying that he has no intention of removing the beds from Buckingham Hospital, which Councillor Cole and I spoke about the other day. So we've achieved something out of that. But I do think the community hubs, the way that we look after our public in that care is more important, because we have to park the health, the doctors thing at the moment, because until they make a move, there's nothing to discuss. So I think that's something that we can discuss. And it's a public meeting it's been discussed in, and I'm a public figure, and I've told the council here. So we just write to the Chief Executive and ask him when he'll be consulting. And so we don't miss it, and we deal with the action rather than be sat there so long with no action.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that suggestion? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Are we ready to vote on that? Should we write this letter? Those in favour?
Yeah.
Well, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Just to move it forward, you see.
Is there anything else on the action list anybody wanted to pick up on? I know the council photos have arrived, although I don't know whether anybody else has had any trouble. I've tried to order some and I've had zero response. Does anybody else have any response?
What?
The photos? No?
Just a question. we took the photographs. Who owns the copy?
The
of
photographer.
The photographer. So we don't own our own photograph.
Never
Well, it's
have
whoever
done.
owns the
Nobody
camera
does.
that it's taken from.
Oh, that's right. I just needed to know that because I thought of screenshotting them and putting them, and then I just thought, well, I better not because I weren't sure who owned. Weren't sure who owned them, and that's why I didn't do it. You see,
Whoever owns the camera.
no, that's fine. Thank you for the
Thank
clarification.
you. So that completes the action list, I think. Reports from representatives on outside bodies. We've not received any. Has anybody got any verbal updates from any outside bodies? In which case, can we receive and note the mayoral engagements?
Yep, thank you very much.
I know the deputy mayor has attended at least one event, but it's not been noted here. Maybe it can go on a future agenda. Chair's announcements. I've been asked to point out to encourage street parties on June the 5th. Buckinghamshire Council are issuing free road closure notices, but there is advice that is attached to that, so that if anybody is going to apply for a road closure, that they should look at what ancillary advice there is in terms of possible public liability insurance and issues like that. But certainly it's something we would want Buckingham to be vibrant on that occasion. Councillor Try.
Sounds like a jolly good job for the communications channel.
those wonderful chaps who do in the steam engine down there.
Thank you. And next, I don't think there's anything else under that heading. Dates of the next meeting. There's a special meeting on Monday, the 9th of May. That's in relation to the Freeman, and then interim, followed by interim, and then the annual statutory meeting in full council on the 30th of May. So that completes our business this evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
Well done, everyone.